Warren?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to let folks know that my wife and I have a scheduling issue for tonight, so I am going to need to leave this meeting at 5:30. If people see me leaving, it doesn't mean that I'm upset with anything being said. So just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, or bored, yes.
Well, let's see if we can help you out here. How's that?
From your lips
Thank
to
you.
God's ears.
Any other courtesy of the floor? Any comments or questions? Moving on to the COVID response grants, page 75, and it says 175?
Question.
Yes?
The broadband deployment, 2024, we had a projection or a budget of 575. We're having a carryover, it looks like a 535 for 2025. Do we have any plans to use that money, and if so, how?
Good afternoon. We do, Councilman Gofredo, we've been doing a lot of digital device training with our Digital Navigator Coalition, and so there are some expenses affiliated with that, and with our device give back program to the community. We've got some smaller miscellaneous charges just to get the devices prepped and out into the community.
You have a rough, I know originally we were talking about trying to get connectivity to areas that didn't have good internet connections. And, $500,000 is a lot of devices. Do we have a number of devices that you guys are hoping to be able to purchase with that? Or is there a larger slated plan for $500,000?
There's no device purchases. We're actually repurposing county-owned devices. When we do a refresh internally, there's just small fees associated to get them all cleaned up and ready to disperse out to the public. As far as infrastructure, we don't intend to spend any money on actual building. That would be up to the current service providers in the area.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other question? Affordable housing is next. I have a question about the carry forward amount. How long does that stay in, or how long do they have till they have to complete those projects or expend that money? Because I know it's awarded and things take more than a calendar year, but is there any kind of limitation?
No, the general grant agreements will be a year, but if they can't complete the project, then we just do a grant extension. So we're hoping that we can have a round coming up in 2025, but that's going to be based on the amount that we have to disperse to make it competitive.
It looks like the future grants amount is significantly less this time. Do you want to?
Because they've been spending money down from the previous awards.
But you say a year, so then, what if it goes on? I know I've been on some of these committees and they just can't raise their own matching, or they can't. So is there a point at which it's okay, we can't?
Oh, yeah, if they can't, then we'll definitely take that money back and repurpose it into the next grant award opportunities.
Any other questions from anyone? Go ahead.
Could you explain the first-time home buyer program?
Yep. So first-time home buyer, we're doing a $20,000 forgivable for closing payments. If the homeowner resides in the house for 5 years, then it's forgiven. And those are given to low, moderate income up to 80% in the county.
Any other questions? Moving into the grants section. Any questions? Moving on to the hotel room rental tax 2000 section. Is there, were we given a list of the projects and what they're for? I mean, they're all here, but normally we, in the past, we've had discussions, and I see there's some communities. So do you have that documentation for us and what they're for? I mean, I know somebody sat on the committee, right?
Yes, Ms. Keegan was the one that was on our hotel tax review, and as you said, in the back of the book on the grants list, they're all listed there, so when we get to that section, if you have any specific questions on those grants, we can certainly answer them.
Well, I think we're here, I don't know, just seeing like which ones are new and with, like, there's one here that says Friends of Levitt Pavilion at Steel Stacks. So what's that compared to, between?
It's a first-time applicant for them, so Levitt Pavilion is separate from Arts Quest as a separate 501c3, and being that they're a first-time applicant, that is for these 60-plus free concerts that they put on at the pavilion.
And then is the Arts Quest money the money that we've promised over time?
The one in the hotel tax specifically, no, it's a different pot.
And what's that for?
The Arts Quest one,
It says 25,000.
do you remember that one?
It's for expanding their footprint of their Chris Kindlemart event.
Different from the one you're thinking of.
Right. And then we see Iron Pigs Charities again. They're back, so what's that for?
That is for the Savannah Bananas, which is the Party Animals, which is the affiliate that will come to the Iron Pig Stadium. Savannah Bananas only go to the Phillies, so this is the team that would come to the Iron Pigs. It's 3-night stay, and I did a little bit of research, so they are going to sell out, pretty popular. Just for reference, they have 3.8 million fans on social media. And it's a lottery system to get tickets, and they quickly sell out in the first hour or two. So they're anticipating a lot of tourism dollars for those games.
They don't sell their tickets normally. They have their online lottery system. They sold out Citizens Bank Park for 2 nights, so, Party Animals and the Savannah Bananas. They play a special form of baseball that lasts 2 hours. It's basically like a party. 56% of the employees at the Iron Pigs will now get 3 extra games to work, where they will be paid as stadium workers because More than half of the stadium workers that work at Coca-Cola Park reside in Northampton County, so
And the other thing I noticed is there's several entities that are having more than one grant of different amounts. So can you share the breakdowns of those? The Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce has 4, 3 Church Hill Arts Historical Society gets 2, et cetera, et cetera. So why are there double grants for some entities?
Lehigh Valley Chamber has so many different locations that they apply separately for each event. So they represent Nazareth for Martin on Main. Northampton has their own street fair, so they have individual applications to support the different areas that they represent. Three Church Hill is a new nonprofit, as a first-time applicant in the county, and their asks were rather small, so we wanted to try to give them assistance as a first-time applicant.
So part of the 2,000 tax that goes in is there is an allocation that's given by law to the recognized tourism organization within the region. So that goes to Discover Lehigh Valley. That is outlined in the state law that they get that money right off the top. So Discover Lehigh Valley, they also have a seat at the table for the rest of the grants, because part of what they do is they actually will help with the marketing in the Lehigh Valley. So when they do their Discover Lehigh Valley campaigns, they have their finger on the pulse. So a lot of the marketing they do. So if somebody comes in with a marketing grant and we can't give them the full amount, Discover Lehigh Valley can identify those folks at the table, and then they help market that event with some of the $2 million they get. But that is listed in the state law that they get that money off the top.
How do they list it? So is it a percentage of the total tax that's collected?
It is, yes. Yes.
You know what that number, like?
I don't know what the breakdowns are, and there's, what I will do is I will get you the laws specifically, because I get them confused. There's the unless I'm looking at them, there's a 2000 and then there's a 2005, which allotted an additional percentage and additional monies that get broken down.
Can we get a breakdown of these, especially when you're referring to the projects in the,
It's on page
Communities.
73 in your detail book. And it is in the back of the white book.
no, there are no details. It says a name and an amount. It doesn't say what the project is. It just has the name of the counties and what they're getting. It doesn't say what they're getting it for. And in the past, we got a list of this is for this. It was like a grid. So I would appreciate if we could receive that.
The grid wasn't in the books before, but we will make sure we get you the grid.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It's on page 175 and 176 for those, and 77 for those playing along at home.
Any other questions? Moving on to hotel room rental tax 2005. This is our Arts Quest money here, correct? In this pool?
That is the 2005 fund that I mentioned previously when I was up here.
Any other question? Moving on to the community development grants. questions or comments? So the other day when we were at Moravian, they mentioned that we would be supporting their UNESCO project in the future. So is it a fair assumption that the Historic Bethlehem Partnership money is geared toward that? That's listed on page 176, or is that for something else?
No, the UNESCO money that was just recently approved was that $100,000. I'm
And-
not anticipating anything else, but
So he made that comment, so is there any promise for the future, or it's going to be a renewable ask every,
it would be a renewable ask.
thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to gaming host county tables. The public safety grant, there's the new award, is that given to a list of folks, or is it to be, there's no list, there's no reports
Yep,
on those
and
things?
that is because the final list was not completed until after the budget book was printed. So actually, I have a copy of that I can give to you.
I'll just pass them down. Just one sheet, right? And are these matches? Do they match, or are these,
Yes.
was there anybody that you had to turn away?
We had to condense some because, as always, our asks are much greater than what our budget is. So we tried to circulate them around, looking at history and who was awarded last time, and to create more whole, meaningful projects.
Any questions? Grow Norco? And these are matching grants, yes?
Yep,
Do we have-
a dollar for dollar, with the exception of community planning, which is a dollar match for every $2 granted.
Any questions? Are any of these projects designated to any kind of senior citizens programming? I know the one place here does have it, but I just wondered if any other, again, there's no list, so.
Senior specific, don't know, but we do work with the Department of Aging, and through our federally allocated CDBG program, we have done repairs on multiple senior centers in the county. Also working with our housing authorities as well for building improvements.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The Sites for Hope, they were in, they presented,
Yes.
but they're not allocated any grant.
Sites for Hope is on here for the transportation services for $10,000.
Top of page 79.
Under 2023. Yeah, 2023, not 2025. But it's not showing any allocation.
That's on our list.
The new award is on page 178 of the Blue Book. They're at the top, so it's Sites for Hope.
Oh, okay.
White book.
It's on the, no, it's in the white book on page
White.
178.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on to the EPA brownfields.
I guess I have a question, this from 24. We had a projection of 85, where did that big money come from, the intergovernmental revenue? Almost $3 million. What is that in result of, Steve? This, but,
Oh, yeah, this is, Mark's been having fun with this, is the $3 million EPA grant that we got.
did we have to apply for certain sites, or was it in general?
So we were previously awarded a RLF grant from the EPA back in 2012, and from our success in that program, we submitted an application for an additional $3 million of supplemental funding. We were awarded in 2022.
We have a lot of restrictions on how to use that?
Yeah, it's EPA restricted, it has to be certified brownfield and et cetera. And
And it can be in the form of a loan, it could be in the form of a grant, depending on the type of project and the remediation that's done. So it's a rather lengthy process. That's the money we have. Council has control, though, of all the worthy projects that come before it, so we will bring all of that information to you. This allows us to have the pool for people to come to us to ask, and then when we get to the stage that we're ready, we come to county council to kind of give you the process.
Thank you.
So I just want to understand that it's, what's listed on as grants, that can be a grant or a loan? You don't separate?
So the
which
funding as it
grants
is
and
now,
which will be part of a payment loan?
it's essentially just for the purposes of this budgeting process, it is just labeled as grants. As we issue loans through this program, then it will be breaking out of the grant. So it refers to grants for only granted projects at the time. So like the EPA Brownfields grant of 300,
Yeah.
that is for the GEDP site. The Upper Mount Pleasantville is, it's not currently a grant, we have no agreement with them. It is technically within being a loan or a grant. As we discussed in previous meetings, it's heading toward the loan.
And then one last question. If I go back to the back of the book and just see what you guys have for spending of that money, I see Upper Mount Bethel, 500,000, there's a previous awards of 300, and then there's 1.97 for future grants. That future grants is basically a pot to draw from throughout the course of the year as things come in and come across you.
And what's the timeline on that? When do they have to apply, or is there a date by which it's expended, or what's the parameters on that?
So we have till 2026 to obligate funds, but we work very closely with the EPA, and as we have projects in the pipeline, we can extend as needed.
Just as a follow-up then, explain to me, who decides whether it should be a grant or a loan? And what are the
EPA
criteria
does.
different?
And the
or-
criteria are different.
And who makes that determination?
The EPA, so,
EPA.
yes, so nonprofits and governmental entities are eligible for grants. However, our funding is specifically for a revolving loan program, so it's intended to have more loans that recycle the program.
Right, great, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
How long does that process take? I guess on the EPA side, do you know what I mean? Like, some,
It's a while.
that's why I asked, like, it's not like, yay, like,
It's not a short process. If you recall, we had our EPA consultant in at the EDC meeting last month, and we believe that they will be coming back to discuss a specific project in November, so.
any other questions? Revolving loan EPA. We just sort of touched on that, but this is a different fund, correct?
As I mentioned, the $3 million or so was the supplemental funding. What's remaining on this one is from the original 2012 grant, which is remaining from getting paid back from the Green Knights Industrial Project. Is currently slated for Easton Iron and Metal Project.
Say that last part again, I'm sorry.
It's currently slated for the Easton Iron and Metal redevelopment.
Thanks. Any other questions? Revolving loan MCLSA. Any other questions for Tina while she's here? Can we get those lists by the end of the week of the other items?
We will send them over to Aileen.
Thank you. And the MCLSA, the things that we just did last week or a few weeks ago, that's not here. This is a new pool of money we're discussing? Or like, who was here? Recovery
Revolution, they're pass-through grants. This one here is through the Banger Trust building that we've been working on for years, and we anticipate one final balloon payment on that property in 2025.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to Public Works. How we doing, Jack? Not even trying. Page 127 in the white. 137 in the other. Is Ron on the phone or no? Okay. Okay. Any questions to start? Mike, you want to come down? Because I'm sure people will have questions for you. Public Works Administration and summary. I guess my first question is maybe not for next year, Mike, but in subsequent years, it says here that the personnel salaries change obviously was a result of the P3 project because of, they're doing the construction and they have some function in the maintenance phase, but will you be needing in the future to increase your staff as that program transitions back to us?
No, there will be no staffing changes. I mean, we hire Benish as or the GPA hired Benish as their third-party consultant engineer. It's really just been, myself and some involvement from the bridge superintendent with the P3 project throughout the way. So there's no changes as a result of that.
Page 131, insect pest management, on page 139. Any questions?
I gotta ask the question. Can you explain to me, like, and I don't wanna sound, I just have how many people are in this department? Like, what's their course of work throughout the course of the year? Like, what kind of projects are they working on? I didn't even know this was a department.
So
Insect
there's-
Pest management.
There's one full-time employee. He works vector control from around April through the end of October, and then he transitions to the Parks Department and assists with snow removal as well as various other projects in the off-season for insect pest. And there's also one seasonal employee that we hire during that April to or late October window.
Did you do anything with the spotted lanternflies when they were, because it seems like they got better, so you can take credit for that.
They did help to set up some traps throughout our county properties.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Solid waste and recycling? Did we do an e-cycling project as a county this year? I know some local, or did we supplement the locals?
A few years back, the county stopped conducting our own county-wide events, and we instead transitioned to funding about 20 to 25 municipally hosted events each year.
Do they have to apply as a grant, or they just do it and ask for the reimbursement, or how does that?
Yeah, they work with our environmental services manager, Serena Davis, to get the event funded. They submit all the documentation that's required, and then they receive reimbursement from the county.
Parks and Recreation? No questions? Open Space Initiative? The Archibald Johnson Conservation Area is not being funded anymore, or was that a specialized project?
It was funded throughout this. I believe this is one that we wrapped up construction this year on.
Do we give them any funding anywhere else, or that was just a specific ask?
It wasn't going to Archibald Johnson. The county owns the property there, so we were able to secure a grant from DEP to fund half of the restoration efforts, and the county matched the DEP grant.
OSI Municipal Parks? OSI Environmentally Sensitive? Act 13 Environmental Initiative. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess. Can I get an explanation as the large budgetary expenditure for professionals or pooled professional services? And we go so fast here, so I'm sure if I read a little bit further, I'd get the answer, but it looks like in total, we only spent 56,000 in '23. In '24, we had a projection of 23,000, but we spent 980. And now we're gonna spend 831,000 in pooled professional services and professional services. I'm sure it's for design fees of some sort, or?
Correct, and that's not necessarily what we're projecting to spend. That's just what's available to us, because we need to match what's in the fund balance between these professional services as well as the construction projects. So this is all the engineering fees that are incurred to get these projects done.
We're just planning on, we have more projects in the pipeline than we did back a couple years ago, and, gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you.
Livable landscapes? Any questions? Go ahead.
It's not gonna be very interesting, but same pooled program operating costs up 1,289%. I see our grants are down drastically, so we're not giving as much money away to grants, but we're spending a lot of money in the program operating costs. Can you explain what that goes to?
It's the same situation as the last org. We're not actually planning to spend all that money on the pool program operating cost. We kind of keep the same level of money going into the grant program every year for our municipalities.
Next, we have custodial services. Operations and maintenance. Next, we have bridges summary and bridges. Act 13, bridge improvements. Act 44, bridge improvements. Act 89 bridge improvements. Mike, I have a question about procedure and not necessarily the funds. So the bridges that we own that are not part of P3, how are those serviced or maintained? Are they just regular inspections that are on some kind of schedule that you manage, or?
Yeah, we have a contract with PennDOT. They have sub-consultant engineering companies that come out and inspect our bridges on a routine basis. If it's a bridge with no real underlying issues, they'll come out every 2 years to inspect it. If it's a bridge that might be in poor condition or is load rated, or there's issues with scour, they'll typically come out and inspect those bridges every year.
And do you have a maintenance schedule that you've developed for the different bridges, or is it only based on PennDOT? Or, I mean, because again, P3 drove the bus on some other things, but,
Yeah, we have a staff of 3 full-time employees that are continuously driving around the county, checking on the bridges and performing routine maintenance.
we also have a question. My favorite subject, P3 bridge improvements. Do we have any update? It's October 23rd. Are we not allowed to, you're allowed to give an update, can't you?
There's 2 bridges left that are currently under construction. One is Bridge 124, Willowbrook Road in Allen Township. They set the beams last week on it. They're making good progress. They should have that one wrapped up around the end of November. And similar situation with Bridge 101, Hanoverville Road in Lower Nazareth. That should be getting wrapped up around the same time frame.
And the end of the maintenance period is when? I know that we just did this 2 weeks ago, I don't remember.
It was adjusted as part of the settlement agreement, and 2030, I believe, the maintenance period ends.
Fair enough. Public Works cost allocation? Page 167, capital project summary. Any questions? Capital improvement projects on page 168 and 197. On page 169, the barn renovation, is that the barn that we discussed previously? Is this something different? This pole barn that you built, or is this
This, yeah, this is the pre-engineered metal building, the new garage at Louisemore Park, currently under construction.
Like, while you're up there, I don't remember it, or I vaguely do, the HVAC upgrades at the forensic center.
It's for the data center,
The data center at the forensic center.
yes.
It's a new building though, right? So what are we upgrading?
The temperatures get a little too warm in there at times.
Because of
It's
the
not
servers.
HVAC for the facility itself.
Any other questions? (2013) bond issue projects. (2019) bond issue projects. And 2021 GISA projects. Capital improvements plan on page 173.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Workforce management migration on the county-wide bottom project. What is that?
It's a software, Kronos.
So our UKG, which runs our Kronos time management software, to be able to push out updates and to make that system usable, we have to go from a server-based system to a cloud-based system that manages all the 24/7 operations like the jail and Graysdale. It goes.
Time management systems like clocking.
So it's clocking in, clocking out, determining the ratios at Graysdale, determining how many people are at the jail, so that we meet all state licensing requirements. It also includes the 911 operations, who's there, who's not, who's on emergency management, lots of those types of things.
You really, like, I understand that it's an estimate and you don't know what's coming next, but you really think that's only a 10-year product for $310,000?
So the 10-year project on that, so it's the initial cost is really upfront. And then it's the maintenance. So what ends up happening is once we're on their cloud-based server, the only thing we really need to worry about then is the upgrade pushouts. So when they upgrade, they'll create a test system for us to utilize on their server, and then we integrate that test system into the production model, which is where everything runs through. So the nice part is we don't have to give them access to our stuff here locally, and they know in their server environment the program works. So it's not something that we would need to set up on the back end, so there's no additional costs on our end. So basically, they maintain all the costs, and since we're sharing that server space, space, in the cloud, we have a lot lower expenses.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have questions about the parks, because it looks like you have projects planned out in 26 and 27. So what are some of the things that you're looking at?
So 2026 for Golf Farm development, that's one we've been, we had a master site development plan conducted a couple years ago. We're in the process of rolling out the Phase 1 improvements to install the parking lot as well as walking trails to connect to the Plainfield Township Trail. So the money in 2026 would be to implement the Phase 2 once we move past the current phase we're working on.
And the Louise Moore Park in 2027?
That's more just a generic line item to account for, if we need paving, if we need bathroom replacement. It's more of just a, typical recurring expense at that park.
Any other questions? Okay, any questions overall? Move to adjourn.